Welcome to episode 8 of the Blindsiders podcast. You're with Mick Edgar and Steve Lamb. As we head into round 4, it's really a case of the haves and the have-nots, with the Warriors and the Dragons on top and the Raiders and the Eels still winless at the bottom. So it's panic stations for the green and the blue and gold, and with the Warriors and the Dragons sitting aloft the premiership ladder, they can probably breathe easy for at least another week. So, mate, Steve, how you doing?
How you going, mate? Yeah, I'm good. Round 3, where a few of the competition heavyweights started bearing their teeth, I think. They're starting to click together and getting the results they need. You mentioned the Warriors. I don't think they'll be up the top too much longer, to be honest. I don't think they've played anyone, but we'll get into that a bit later. Yeah, it was an interesting round with a few interesting results. A few I expected, a couple I didn't. But, yeah, it was enjoyable all around.
Yeah. Obviously, there's some bigger talking points that came out of the games in round 3, and one of the big ones was the Tigers and the Broncos game, and the penalty late in the game for the markers not standing square given by Ashley Klein, which was very contentious and a big talking point, and further reinforces that urban legend that the Broncos get preferable treatment from the referees, and even the referee's boss came out and said that the decision was incorrect. So the West Tigers can feel aggrieved and hard done by at the expense of the Broncos. So we've seen that happen before. That was one of the bigger talking points. So obviously, some of the other talking points were Parramatta going down to the Sharks and still remaining winless with injuries to both Bevan French and Jared Hayne. Obviously, the Raiders ahead by 7 points with only a few minutes to go, and they managed to completely fuck it up yet again for their third loss in a row by 2 points or less. So they have a negative differential of -5, but are in all sorts of trouble, and we'll get to that when we go through the team lineups for round 4. But there's some of the bigger talking points. Obviously, the Dragons walloped the Titans and are looking like the form team of the competition. I tend to agree with the sentiments about the cream starting to rise to the top. You can see that the Roosters and the Storm are looking pretty good early in the season after both losing to the Tigers, but they both had good wins on the weekend. So, yeah, from that point of view, everything seems to be going to the script. But there's obviously going to be, and the biggest news is the four-way trade. It looks like, I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but it looks like the Raiders are trying to get Robbie Farah. Fuck knows why.
No.
From the Rabbitohs.
Just please fucking no. Please no.
And in turn, if that happens, then Stewart would release Aiden Caesar to the Dogs, and the Dogs would release Aiden Tolman to the Sharks. So
I think the Sharks. Do the Sharks need another toiler? Aiden Tolman, he's a toiler. There's no. He just hits up and tackles. Do they need that?
It seems like a really strange signing to me. So to me, it's just going to be a depth signing. He's not going to be the type of player that pushes his way into the starting 13 or into the forward pack, given the players that they've got. I mean, he's not as good a player as Jason Bakuya, in my opinion. And Luke Lewis is back from injury. So you would think that with Lewis, Wade Graham and Paul Gallen in the back row and guys like Bakuya on the bench, I'm not sure that there's a spot for Tolman. It seems a really odd signing for a team that's got one of the stronger forward packs in the comp. So, and the Raiders, with a few hookers that they've already got, I mean, what happens to Harvey Garvey if Farah comes? I mean, Garvey looks like the obvious choice to spell Havili, but that doesn't happen. So, and now they're going to bring in Farah, who's, 33? Stewart's moves are reeking of desperation now, and I really can't fathom the thought processes and what he's going through here. Obviously, the Dogs need a second playmaker to help out Kieran Foran, because they're probably going to struggle with just Foran and maybe Matt Frawley. So that's probably the main part of the news outside of, there's been no ball tampering in rugby league this week. So that's a good thing. So, and obviously the other news is the situation with Manly under siege over salary cap rorting Now, my question is that fines were handed out, but why weren't the Sea Eagles deducted points like Parramatta were a couple of years ago? Any
Well,
thoughts on that?
I'm not sure about the points deduction thing, but we're Manly really fined. They've been stripped of being allowed to spend. So 660,000 over the next 2 seasons, they cannot spend on the cap. So basically, and there's a point to this because the NRL coffers have no money. So if they penalise Manly too much and fine them too much, the Scott Penn that owns the Sea Eagles, it could cripple him financially, and the NRL cannot afford a club going balls up right now because they do not have the money to bail out another club. It's not there. So this is the punishment they've given them. Why they weren't deducted points, I have no idea. That was probably the obvious solution, but it's round 3. Do they have any points to deduct? Well, they got 2. They could have banked another 4 to 6 or whatever. And I guess if you're a Parramatta fan, you probably feel a tad ripped off. But they have gained an advantage out of this. They gained DCE when the Titans looked like they were going to have him as halfback, but they ended up with Ash Taylor anyway. I mean, he's going to be just as good, if not better, over time, I think. But yeah, I think it's enoughy punishment, to be honest. The NRL cannot afford another club going broke, so they've basically saved Scott Penn $660,000 over the next 2 years. That's basically it. And what that means for Manly is they will not be able to bolster their squad. That's it. And $330,000 a year, that either means they might lose a player that's coming through. I highly doubt it. And basically, what does $330,000 get you anyway? In this day and age, it gets you a solid first grader. That's about it. So I don't think there's much of a punishment at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, you probably get a winger and a non-representative level winger for 330 grand. Look, I've got some real issues with this. I mean, Joel Thompson was signed with house money then. How do they afford to bring over Joel Thompson from the Dragons to Manly this year when they're knowingly over the cap? This reeks of Andrew Ryan when he went from the Eels to the Bulldogs when the Bulldogs were systematically roiding the cap back in 2002. Yet they still allowed Ryan to head across to the Bulldogs from the Eels, and in 2004 they win the comp with Ryan standing in as captain because Steve Price was injured.
So, yeah, I remember I was at a barbecue when I was with a bunch of Bulldogs fans actually, and it was the day Andrew Ryan signed, and the news actually probably a day or two after. We didn't have the internet as fluently back then, but I just called bullshit straight off the bat. And I just said, how the hell can you afford to fit that guy in under the cap? And lo and behold, sometime later, it all come out. But not sure where I'm going with this. But yeah, it's pretty much the same, I guess. But the NFL ratified this. Like, there was already concerns over Manly's breach of the cap. Yet they've still registered Joel Thompson's contract. So. And they're in the middle of this investigation, so there's either a miscommunication somewhere, or they've already knew what was going on and just allowed it and gone from there. I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't have a clue what the NRL decides these days. It baffles me half the time.
Oh, it baffles me all the time. So, and Dylan Walker was another one of these players that was signed with Confederate money as well. So he's obviously not back yet, but he's one of the stars in the Manly lineup. My other question, and this is a big one, should Bob Fulton be stripped of his immortal status for his role in the salary cap rorting? Does it tarnish his legacy as a player and obviously as a selector? I mean, he's refused to front inquiries into Manly's salary cap and obviously has been involved in the systemic rorting and breaches in the salary cap. But yet, these guys are fucking Teflon. I just don't get it. Like, the game is a law unto itself. So it administers some piss-weak punishment that means fuck all. So teams like Canterbury and Parramatta can feel aggrieved that a team like Manly, who's done the same thing, but to a lesser extent, yet receive a slap on the wrist and, like Paul Keating said about John Hewson. It's like being flogged with warm lettuce.
um, look, yeah, if I was a Para fan, I'd be highly ticked off right now. But look, as for Bob Fulton's immortal status, there's nothing's going to change. Joey Johns was made an immortal after illicit drug use. I mean, it's the NRL way, it's the rugby league way. But I don't think anything is going to impact on Bob Fulton's immortal status. And he's come out and basically said in the media that he hadn't been contacted by the NRL for 110 days. He's been treated rough, blah, 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 blah. Reminds me of when he was coaching Manly, he sent his son Scott out, and I think it was Bill Harrigan refereeing. I can't remember who they were playing, but the penalty count was like 11-2 or 12-2, and he's interchanged his son Scott out there, and with the basic instruction to go and talk to Bill Harrigan to say the penalty count is 12-2 their way. And as soon as he said something to Bill Harrigan, he's blown a pee out of the whistle straight away and said, well, now it's 13-2. So cop that. But as for Bob Fulton's immortal status, nothing's going to change, man. Nothing will happen there. They'll just basically phase him out of the game as they're doing right now, and you won't hear much from him again apart from a feel-good article in the media every now and then, I guess.
So is he still on the continuous call?
Wouldn't have a clue. Would not have a clue.
I haven't listened to that in such a long time. I don't even know who's on it. So you have to think, Hadley's all holier than thou and very sanctimonious at times about other people. But looks like, according to the 2GB website, he's still on there.
Can I just look something up? We'll keep talking, but I think Hadley's come out and had a go at the NRL over this.
Has he?
I've seen that somewhere. I'm just quickly checking on my phone, but I'm pretty sure I've seen Hadley going off about this. But yeah, we'll keep talking.
Those are obviously the big talking points out of round 3 and coming to this week. So we've got the next round over Easter to look forward to. But we go back and have a look at the games in round 3. The main talking points, obviously the funny looking scoreline for the West Tigers and Broncos, 9-7. The Bulldogs held on to beat the Panthers 20 points to 18. Storm were too good for the Cowboys in the first game, 30-14. Raiders lost the fucking unlosable game for the 26th time under Ricky Stewart. And look, his seat would have to be warming up, but not just his, but that's almost a whole episode's worth to talk about the fucking fast that is the Raiders, and the leadership vacuum going on there is just defying logic at the moment. The Rabbitohs stumped the Sea Eagles, so 34-6. That was a really impressive win by them. So we'll see if they can back that up this week. The Eels went down to the Sharks 14-4. As we said earlier, the Dragons thrashed the Titans 54-8. And the Roosters beat the Knights 38-8. Now, the scoreline probably doesn't indicate the closeness of the game, but the Roosters scored some sizzling tries, and you'd have to think that Luke Keary, if he is a New South Welshman, is probably, with the injury to Nathan Cleary, have an inside running to get one of the half spots for the Blues, if he is actually a Blue, because there's always been a bit of contention whether he's a Blue or a Maroon, so I don't yet know where his allegiance lies, but that's how round 3 looks. Gone through the main talking points, so in the interest of getting into the games for this weekend, have you got any more you want to add about the games in round 3?
Oh, I had a summary on every game, but we don't have to go into that.
No, let's hear it.
The game 1, Storm 30, Cowboys 14. It was a grand final rematch that turned out to be a bit flat, in my opinion. The Storm had a game plan from the get-go. They attacked side to side for the first 20, tied the Cowboys up a bit. They didn't head up the guts till after the 20-minute mark. Cowboys had plenty of opportunities in the second half. But in the first half, it was 18-8 at half-time, but the Cowboys had 21 missed tackles, 8 errors, and 6 penalties cost the Cowboys in the first 40. Cohen Hess was immense for the Cowboys, but Dale Finucane, he had a blinder for the Storm. He was the one that limited Taumalolo to 84 yards and it's the second week in a row that Taumalolo has been kept under 100 yards that the Cowboys have lost. So it's a key thing that, and a game plan that some other sides with the capability might follow this year. But yeah, another P out of the whistle performance from the refs, 20-odd penalties.
Yeah, this and all the penalty counts in the games have been very similar. Now, I'm not sure if this will settle down, but 20 penalties in a game is fucking ridiculous. That's so much stop-start that really takes away from the continuity of the game itself by blowing 20 penalties. I mean, I know they need to clean up the offside and the play the ball, especially the play the ball. I actually think that's a good thing. You tend to be on the other side where you don't really care how the ball is played. I'm actually a stickler for them putting their foot on the ball. I
just seen the writing on the wall, and I've been proven right. So I knew the P was going to be blown out of the whistle early on this season. I don't know how long it's going to last, but if they stick to it, fair enough. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's just a referee thing. I think it's a whole system thing. The players and the clubs have to adhere to what the NRL want, and the referees have to get some shit right. So, yeah, I don't know where it's gonna go from here, but yeah, the P's going to be blown out of the whistle for a few more rounds yet, I guess.
Okay, so moving on to the next ones. Obviously, Bulldogs and Panthers. Bulldogs led most of the game, and the Panthers came back late. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, yeah, Panthers gave up another 14-block lead. Bulldogs' defence improved after, on the first two rounds. Ambai killed it. Again, he's playing great guns at fullback. 18 tackle breaks, 135 running yards. Cleary injured, out for 10 weeks. And can Aaron Woods fuck the Blues anymore? It's bad enough he plays for the Blues. Now he's just taking out the fucking halfback. Well in, Aaron Woods. Broncos 9, Tigers 7. I haven't got much to say about this. Tigers were robbed. Yeah, it was a low-scoring, gritty game involving the Tigers. And it's the Tigers, the Tigers don't know how to score. They can hold a team at bay all day, but they don't know how to put a fucking try on.
I still believe the better team lost in this game.
Yeah, you're probably right, but the Tigers need to address their attack. They're really good seem to be really good at holding teams at bay and limiting their opportunities, and the tough, gritty forward pack that's paving the way, sort of, but they haven't got any. Like Benji Marshall's been brilliant this year in game management, but he's not the flary player they have, like the flary type player that he was years ago. They're all talking about Josh Reynolds coming back, but I always found Josh Reynolds' attack hit and miss. I can't guarantee that the Tigers will start just scoring points instantly as soon as he gets back into the mix.
He plays a more direct game than Benji Marshall, though. Benji Marshall plays more side to side, and Reynolds will take off and run himself at times, so he will play it far straighter, and I reckon that'll result in more points for the Tigers. Got to give them a rap. They had a good crowd, 15,000 plus out at Campbelltown. So, if you're ever shopping for dentures, you could have gone to the stadium after the game and probably found 100 pairs and pick them up for nothing.
Campbelltown should be their permanent home, but that's a conversation for another day. Warriors 20, Raiders 19. I was actually at this game, and I had a good few days down in Canberra with my beloved missus, but I actually ruined it by going to this fucking game. First 3 in a row for Warriors for God knows, I think forever. First time we won 3 on a trot.
To start the season, yep.
Raiders, all the ball in the first 20, skipping out to 12-0. Blair Sinbin, Warriors scored with 12 men. I think that was a momentum shift slightly there. Raiders scored early in first half. 19-6 lead, 19-16 lead, 19-6 lead at halftime. Sorry, I work night shift. I've had like 2 hours sleep. Warriors hit back, come back 19-12, and then you could just see it unfold from here. It was a disallowed try to Junior Paulo, which is probably right, but who fucking knows with the obstruction rule anymore? No one knows. Inside, outside shoulder, who knows? Raiders shut up shop in the last 10. They went defensive, whereas when they were successful in 2016, they kept playing the full 80. They kept attacking. This side just doesn't do that. there's a lot of, that's a conversation for another day. And you guys handled that pretty well. I listened to the Green Machine podcast that you're a part of this afternoon, and I think you guys nailed it on the head pretty well. So if anyone wants to hear about what's wrong with the Raiders, go listen to the Green Machine podcast. Luke scored in the 76th minute, and then easy made it.
Soft.
It was soft as. And then what was softer was the two sets of six after that. It was so, like, I was sitting at the game, I said to Tanya, I said, Warriors are going to win this. She's like, no, it's only a couple of minutes to go. I said, watch this. And they just made 80 metres out of nothing and set Johnson up to kick 2 field goals. But the Warriors, to their credit, they're showing a lot of resilience. An old Warriors side would have let this game go. And Raiders were clueless in the last 10 and didn't require the applied pressure to hold out. So that was basically that.
Now, just on this game, the press conference from Ricky Stewart was absolute fucking bullshit.
Oh, it was totally deflecting, man.
Yep, exactly. That was a word I was going to use. He just deflected everything back onto, the Junior Paulo thing. Well, that should have been a try, and it's just not good enough. It's not good enough. Yep. The Raiders have got no one else to blame but themselves in that last 10 minutes. And like you said, those last 2 sets of six to allow Johnson to level the scores and then kick the field goal to win the game is unbelievable. The amount of yards that they were making, like I said, in those 2 sets of 6 after the try, it was just, and you could see it coming. Every Raiders fan was about to throw up, thinking, you know what, it's going to happen again. I could feel it. You could feel it in the podcast for the Green Machine. Mike and Lobby could feel it. You see all the comments on Facebook that everybody could feel it, and there's a real systemic problem here that's probably the equal of the rot setting in with Cricket Australia at the Raiders. It's fucking terrible. But and look, and I'm happy to focus more on this, but we'll get through the other games, and we've got time. We can come back to it. But
we should do it. I was going to suggest an independent episode for that, but you already do that at the Green Machine podcast, so I don't know if you want to double up on your misery.
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Do I need the stress and the rise in blood pressure? Probably not. So, all right, we'll move on to the next one, Rabbitohs and Seagulls. Yeah,
South's got away to a 14-0 lead at half-time. Manly hit back in the second half, but when nowhere in this, South's forwards were so dominating over Manly's and allowed their backs to pile on the points. Manly were on the back foot the whole game. Big Sam Burgess, man of the match, 165 running yards, but he just dominated. He was just brutal. He was hard. It was the old Sam Burgess in this game. Actually, 4 of South's starting forwards ran for over 100 yards, and they had 1,954 running metres in total, their forwards. So, yeah, dominant was pretty much an understatement. Forwards got over the top of Manly. The backs followed suit and scored the points. Yep. That was pretty much what the game was.
Yeah, if you give that back line any space, they're going to hurt you because they are probably the fastest back line in the NRL.
Yeah, a lot of speed there. And Inglis hasn't even hit his straps yet. So,
look, I'm a massive fan of Alex Johnston. I reckon he will go close to be the leading try scorer this year. And obviously, I think he's had one game of Origin. I'd love to see him get another crack, but an Origin episode will come in the next couple of weeks. But we'll devote an extra episode just to talk about Origin. But yeah, Johnston to me is on the fringe, sort of like a Jack DeBellin type player in terms of his closeness to getting into the New South Wales side.
Yeah.
So, all right, next one, mate, the Sharks and the Eels.
Was it Dara Fair at ANZ to complete the double header that was there? Chad Townsend scored all 14 points. Para were ill-disciplined, but did break a 153-minute scoring drought. Hayne went off with a hip injury. So that's all I've got to say about that game. Not much to talk about there.
Just on that one, obviously there's big internal rumbling that Parramatta have player discontent, and the NRL rumour mill, the Mole, has come out and said that Arthur's only got a couple more weeks before Michael Maguire would step in and take over if the results weren't there. It's hard to see things changing for the Eels because they're talking about feuds between Corey Norman and Jared Hayne. They're talking about contract disputes between the Eels and Bo Scott, and Nathan Brown isn't being used the way he wants to be used. So and Parramatta at the back end of last year were looking like such a a side with so much potential. I mean, they do have issues with the stupidity of their forward pack, and to date, Kane Evans hasn't really panned out the way they would have liked. Although it's still only early, it may take him time to adjust from the Roosters playing style to the Eels playing style. But there's a lot of problems going on at Parramatta, and only that the Raiders are down the bottom would be the only reason you would say that they've got a chance to jump off the cellar. So interesting to see what happens with the blue and gold. They play the Tigers, and it's going to be a hard test for them out at ANZ on Easter Monday. So we'll get to that in the preview. But moving right along, we had the thrashing of the Titans by the rampant St George Illawarra Dragons.
Yeah, Dragons scored early, but after 20 minutes, it was 8-all. After that, the floodgates just opened and big time. Score blew out to 26-8 within a few minutes. Duffy and Laffey just all over it. Great attacking play from the Dragons. Widdop man of the match. Titans lacked execution, and unless Taylor is doing something special, only time they look like scoring is when Harilla's running rampant. So that's about it. Dragons looked on fire. They really are looking like a unit that's coming together quite slick with a lot of polish, like the shine on Peter Dennis's head.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Look, it's hard to see that the Dragons would miss the top four given their dominant start, because they're streets ahead of everybody else at the moment. Now, that obviously doesn't last for the whole season, because given their form, they may have a few more players in contention for State of Origin this year. You'd have to think Jack DeBellin and the Stallion, Paul Vaughan, are probably not certainties, but a really strong chance to make their debut for New South Wales, and deservedly so. Both of them are playing outstanding football. So, they may have a bit of a mid-season falter because of representative honours for some of their players, but they look like they've got the depth to cover that. So, Mary should get a contract extension. They should think about pulling Peter Dow's retirement plans and putting him back in the top job. So,
oh, they'll love that.
Yeah, no more Ouse Douse. It's they'll have to come up with a new slogan. So
yeah, Hunt's a definite for Origin. I think over on the bench or at starting halfback, like him and Morgan will contest that number 7 spot, and what's his face from Melbourne will get the number 6 job, Munster, for sure. So I think they might have a few players out come Origin time. I haven't looked at that far ahead at the draw. Don't know when they've got their buys or who they're playing during that period, but I think if they keep this up, they'll be close to top 2, but they're definitely top 4 side.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to the last game of the round, the Roosters took care of the Knights. What are your thoughts on this one?
Thud. That was the sound of the Knights coming back to earth. They were totally outclassed, I thought. You said that the score didn't reflect on the actual competition. I thought that the Roosters just had more polish, more class than the Knights. And when you got a side like that that's questionably under the cap for some reason, you expect these type of results. Kiri, another big game. That kick chase from Cronk where he did that flick pass, that was just, it'd have to be close to try of the year, like at this stage of the competition. That was just awesome. But yeah, Roosters were too good for the Knights, and like I said, they're just too much polish and class in the end.
Yeah, and you have a look at the Titans and the Knights only scoring 8 and getting pumped by the Dragons and the Roosters respectively. So just to come back to the Raiders for a minute, they were the Raiders' first 2 opponents. So it shows how far off the pace Canberra are if they're losing in last-minute thrillers to the Knights and the Titans, and that Titans get beat 54-8 and the Knights 38-8. It shows what the Raiders can look forward to for the rest of the year, unless they can pull their thumb out and turn it around immediately, starting this weekend with Manly. So that's a good review of all the games. So we can now look forward to tomorrow night's game between the Cowboys and the Panthers up at 1300 Smile Stadium in Townsville. So the Cowboys, if they lost this one, they'd be 1-3. Wouldn't be where most people expected them to be this early in the season. What are your thoughts on this one?
Cleary's out for 10 weeks. Tyrone Peachy into the halves. Jerome Luai on the bench and Wade Egan in the extended bench. Griffo is keeping Griffo or Gould, whoever's coaching the side, is keeping their options open. Lachlan Coote's been named on the reserves bench. After 2 straight losses, the Cowboys at home, 13 plus, man. They will take care of Penrith easily, I think.
All right, although Peachy can be a bit of a live wire, so whilst you think the Cowboys at home would be specials against Penrith, Penrith should stop worrying about fucking growing moustaches and just play football.
Or hyphening names.
Yeah, that's right.
Hyphenated names, sorry. Look, the last 2 losses for the Cowboys were against the Broncos and the Storm. Both had key players in their forward pack that shut down Taumalolo and kept their up the guts momentum to a minimum. So I can't see anyone in this Panthers, maybe Gillard or something like that, but I can't see Penrith shutting down the Cowboys pack like the last 2 opponents have. So I think the Cowboys at home, 13 plus.
There'll be no carbon tax under a government that I lead. So Gillard's most famous line.
Yep.
So
now she's rotting beyond blue. How good is it?
Oh, I never knew that. Maybe she should grow a moustache. It'd probably suit her. Next game, Bunnies and the Dogs. So I'm happy to talk about this one on Good Friday. So this is 4:10 game. We've seen some cracking games between these two sides over the years. I think it was 2015 where Adam Reynolds slotted a goal on his own side of halfway at the end of the game, and there was a bottle throwing incident in this game where the Rabbitohs beat the Bulldogs. Now, I like the Rabbitohs in this game. If they can hold the Bulldogs up front, I reckon they've got too much speed for the Bulldogs out wide. So I like the Rabbitohs. I think it'll be close. I think there'll be a 1-12 margin, but I'd be backing the Rabbitohs in this one. What do you reckon?
If South's forward pack play like they did last week, then yeah, and I agree with you. I think it'll be a close margin. It won't be a blowout. I got South's 1-12 only on the back of what their forwards did last week. If they continue that form, and I actually rate this young halfback they got, Adam Dewey. I think he's in for a good future if they can keep him in league. Like, he's obviously from a rugby union background, but he retains his spot. Reynolds is at least another week away. They're probably enjoying that. But no changes to the Dogs. Jeremy Marshall-King retains his spot in the halves. But I think this is going to be one in the forwards, and I think South's forwards are going to be too strong.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Although the Bulldogs can surprise, I did pick them to beat Penrith last weekend, so I'll claim that one for me. But I think like I said, if the South's forwards can get on top, I reckon their backs will be able to do the job and find a bit of space and score plenty of points, and definitely enough to beat the Dogs. Next game for the later game is the Sharks versus the Storm. So we've got a replay of the 2016 grand final. This should be an interesting game. So it's going to be a tough one for the Sharks, given that their form and only win has come against the lowly Eels. And the Storm don't really matter. It doesn't bother them if they're playing at home or away. So at Shark Park, I think the Storm would actually fancy their chances in this one. What do you think?
Well, the Sharks have a shocking record there lately. They've only won 6 out of the last 14 games at home. Moylan and Luke Lewis return. Kenny Bromwich is back for the Storm. Joe Stimson remains in the starting lineup with Felice Kafusi still out with a hammy. I think Storm in the tight one. The Sharks' record at home, and we've seen it against the Dragons live. They kind of capitulate at home. I don't know what the deal is with that. But the way the Storm played last week and the way their forwards fired, I think they'll muscle up and they'll get a 1-12 win. I don't think it'll be a blowout. It'll be a tight game. Probably a bit argy-bargy in between. But, yeah, I think the Storm will just get over the top of them, 1-12.
Yeah, so you would think that the Sharks need to see more from Dugan and Delta in this game for them to win. Because to date, even though we're into the 4th round, neither one of them has really shown that much. So, I think that Moylan and Dugan are really going to have to step up against one of the big guns of the premiership to to see the Sharks home in this one. But yeah, like you, I don't see it. I think the Storm will have too much class and will out muscle the Sharks in the end. Oh, forward pack battle should be a pretty good one. But I think the Storm will get the cookies in the end. So Storm to win that one 1-12. First game on Super Saturday, for Easter Saturday, is the Roosters versus the Warriors. So a replay of the 2002 grand final. So we've got we've got Rabbitohs and Bulldogs, which was the 2014 grand final. Sharks Storm was 2016. Roosters Warriors 2002. Seagulls Raiders 1987. So there's been a few grand final replays here. So, but we'll look at the Roosters and the Warriors. Can the Warriors maintain their unbeaten start to the season? What do you reckon?
No chance. Roosters are unchanged. Warriors, Blair moved to lock, and Ignatius Parsi is going to play prop, and Chris Satay replaces the suspended Sam Lasoni. Simon Mannering's another week away at least. The Warriors, though, are a little bit of a bogey side for the Chooks, winning their last 3 encounters, but this game, I expect the Warriors to come back to earth this week like Dave Dobbins' career after Slice of Heaven. Roosters 13+.
Nice land of the long white cloud reference there. So, yeah, I tend to think you might be right. I think it could be 80 minutes in a leaky boat for the Warriors. That was bad, I know, but it just sprung to mind. So I thought if you're going to do a pun about New Zealand music, I'd throw one in there for split ends. So, look, the Roosters aren't over the line in this game by any means. So the Warriors' newfound confidence, the fact that they've broken one of their own hoodoos by winning their first 3 games of the season since their inception in 1995, will do wonders for their ability to hang in with tough games. And they're not going to come much tougher than the Roosters. I don't believe that Allianz Stadium gives the Roosters any distinct home advantage because they have fucking shithouse crowds. So they don't get a great home following with out-of-town teams. You know, if we're talking about South, yes. We're talking about the Dragons, yes. But if we're talking about the Warriors, well, all the Kiwis from Bondi Junction, they'll head en masse. I mean, they'll have some lamb stew and have a root with a fucking sheep before they come to the game, and they'll be out in force, and they could actually outnumber the Roosters fans in this game.
Well, this is the Warriors' first blue chip game against a blue chip opposition. They've beaten the Rabbitohs, the Titans, and the Raiders. So this is their big test. This game will test how far they've actually come under Steve Kearney. So far, I know it's early in the season, but they're playing a blue chip.
Yep, the proverbial litmus test. So should be an interesting game though. So it could be one of the better games of the round. Saturday 7:30, we had to cross to Lotto Land for the 1987 grand final replay between the Sea Eagles and the Raiders. It was Wayne Bennett's last game in charge, I think, of Canberra before he moved up to Brisbane in 1988. So,
yep.
Turmoil at the Sea Eagles. Will that galvanise them and give them the siege mentality they need to win by 1 point against Canberra, who will shoot out to an 18-0 lead and then just capitulate in the final 15 minutes and hand the Sea Eagles a 19-18 win? So hard to know what to pick of this game, but the Raiders away from home, you wouldn't like their chances because I think their mindset is fucking shithouse. I think they're not playing with any confidence, and I don't know how without the leadership on the field and that Blake Austin's the sacrificial lamb. Like, pardon your surname there, but I don't think he should have been the player to be dropped. I think Sam Williams should have gone, and I also think that Junior Paulo should have gone. And neither one of those guys has been pulling their weight. I think Austin, his defence hasn't been up to scratch, but his running game has still been effective in my opinion. And he's a player that, in my opinion, we need against a team like Manly. I don't think that Sam Williams is doing much at all. His kicking game isn't up to scratch, and neither is his defence. So, to me, he's been substandard, and he should be back at Mounties plying his trade there and having Austin and Caesar back in the halves. What do you reckon about this one?
Manly galvanised under Desi, Manly galvanised under Tuvey. Can Manly galvanise under push-ups Barrett? Don't know. We'll find out. If they play anything like they did against Parrot at Brookvale, then the Raiders could be in trouble. Matthew Wright replaces Georgie Tafura on the wing. Blake Austin's been dropped, or wherever he's on the reserves list anyway. Arda Hingano comes onto the bench. Joe Tarpany returns from injury. He's named on the bench, but I would expect him to start for Luke Bateman.
I was going to say, Luke Bateman surely must be living on borrowed time. What he's offering to the Raiders when he's on the field, fuck knows. He's not doing anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. Manly got the better of Canberra twice last season. I expect that to continue at Lotterland in a game that could get ugly if Manly turn up like they did against Para. Because the Raiders, who have the Raiders played so far? Manly played like a blue chip against Para. They were tough. The attack was on. Forwards were, right in their face. And I know it was just against Para, but if Manly are on and the Raiders dish up what they've been dishing up, Manly will get the early lead and the Raiders won't know what to do with it because they're used to getting the lead and shutting down shop. But, I think Manly 13 plus, dude. I hate to say it, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Oh, look, I think it Manly by 20 plus. But what does it mean for Ricky Stewart if he starts the season 0-4?
Nothing.
And this is the problem. So the lack of accountability. What does it mean for Jared Croker? I mean, like I said, top bloke, but...
Raiders were founded in 1982, and I think they've replaced 2 board members in that time, only due to natural causes. So, how many coaches have the Raiders actually sacked in their existence? I can't remember. Like, did we sack Meninga? Dave Ferner, okay. And what about Meninga?
No, but Meninga, he co-coached with Matt Elliott for a season.
Did he?
So there was a transition there in 2001 or 2002 where they were both co-coaches, and then Mal left and Matt Elliott took over.
Did Mal step down to let Elliott come in, or did the club tell him?
No, I think he stepped down, but he wasn't sacked. So a sacking is like, right, it's like round 10, you're sacked. We've got an interim coach for the remainder of the season. You're out of here. So, if they let the player, the coach resign and say, look, you put your resignation in and we'll pay you out for the remainder of the year, and you just take them through and that's it, you go. And it's still probably classed as a resignation, but sacked, you would only think that David Ferner, and funny because he's the one with the strongest ties to the club, given that his old man was the CEO and coach at one stage, and his brother is the current CEO. So he's got a lot of connections, but he was shown the door, and part of it was for the mindset of the players. So it obviously comes to bear now that it wasn't Dave Ferner's fault, that this is an endemic cultural problem within the Raiders, that the same mindset and the same ridiculous fucking tactics of sliding and not running up and the lack of line speed is what's killing them. It's what's killing them. So, and you would think that if the Raiders go 0-4, their finals chances are gone. It'd be very, very hard if St George win, right? So let's say St George win against the Knights, and that's a pretty fair assessment. So they're at 4-0. The Raiders are at 0-4. That's an 8-game turnaround. An 8-game turnaround to catch up after 4 rounds. You would think that there's no chance of the Raiders coming back from an 0-4 start. Same as Parramatta. And both of these teams have got massive internal problems from the look of it. And whilst Arthur is not deflecting to the level of Ricky Stewart and blaming everybody but the fucking ball boy, there's big problems for both clubs. So I say if the Raiders lose this one, their season's over. You've got to be pragmatic and realistic about this and not be one of those fans who fucking gets up people and says, if you're not supporting the team week in, week out, you're not a real fan. It just shows that those of us who get the shit and come out and talk about it bluntly and openly care just as much about the Raiders as what those who are just, like the Joker in Batman, forever got a smile on their face no matter how bad things are, and saying, okay, well, if you don't support the team, you're not a real fan. Well, everybody's allowed to support the team in different ways, and everybody handles the losses and the painful losses at that in different ways. So to me, there's so much bad about what's going on, and I mean that with Ricky Stewart, and I'm always going to press home this statistic, would only have made the finals once in 5 seasons, but would still demand a contract extension of over $1 million a year. That is worthy of a fucking Royal Commission in itself. So I've got real issues here, and the Raiders, if they don't show the desperation that's needed, a 1 point loss still isn't enough to hold your head high, because a 1 point loss still means you're 0-4. You don't get a prize for coming second, like Jimmy Barnes' song. So for me, it's season on the line for the Raiders against the Seagulls. They lose, it's fucking game over for 2018. Moving right along, Dragons and the Knights. Take it away.
Dragons, no changes. Connor Watson is out indefinitely. Brock Lamb comes in. Knights at 2. Yeah. Distant cousin. Knights are 2-1 at win, but that means diddly the way the Dragons are playing right now. It will be an improved Knights win. Knights after last week, but I'm tipping Dragons 1-12.
Yeah, I'm tipping Dragons 13+. I think they're in a really fucking mean mood, and they're playing no mercy football. So I think if they get in front, Newcastle won't be able to keep pace with the Dragons, and the Dragons will just go, you know what, fuck you. We're not going to just take our foot off your throat. We're going to just fucking stomp your airways. So I think the Dragons could be 20+ in this game, and I expect them to win quite comfortably. I think they're playing ruthless football at the moment, and that's what it takes to win premierships. So whilst the Knights, they'll probably put in a good 80-minute performance, but I still think they'll be well off the pace in this one. Next game is the local derby at Suncorp between the Broncos and little brother Titans. Hard to see anything but a Broncos victory in this one. Well, the Broncos haven't been playing that well, and the Titans, up until the Dragons game, not that bad, but you'd have to think the Broncos are going as heavy favourites here. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I can't say nothing but a Broncos win, but I don't think it's going to be a flogging for some reason. Pangai Jr. is out with a hamstring. Corey Oates is out with a hip. Corbin Sims and Jonas Pearson come in. Jane Sewer on the bench. Cartwright drops to the bench for the Titans after poor starts. Jai Arrow starts at lock. Will Matthews into the back row. At Suncorp, it's Brisbane 11, Gold Coast 1. I think that will continue, but in a close one. I don't think it's going to be a flogging for some reason. I don't know why. But I think Broncos 1-12.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, the Broncos haven't been overly convincing. They beat the Tigers by 2 without scoring a try, mind you. So it was Asako that got all the points in that game just by kicking goals and a field goal. And they beat the Cowboys by 4. So you wouldn't say that in their loss they were comprehensively outplayed by the Dragons, as were the Titans. But I think the Titans will aim up, and they always look forward to the local derby, little brother, big brother clash between them and the Broncos. And the Suncorp, being Easter Sunday, I would expect 30,000 plus for a local derby. So I give the Titans a red hot chance in this one. I don't think they'll get the win, but I reckon they'll give it a shake. So it should be, for Queensland, it should be an interesting game. I can't say that it really jumps out at me and says, oh, fuck, I've got to sit down and watch this game because it's the Broncos and I just loathe the bastards. But, I think the Titans will give a good account of themselves. I think it'll be like the Anzacs at Gallipoli. They'll just fucking keep running into the fire, and they'll take what comes, and we'll see who's left standing at the end of it. And obviously the Broncos are like the Turks, motherfuckers. Sorry to any Turkish people listening to the podcast. That was not. I'm referring
rather harsh.
Yeah, I'm referring to the events between 1914 and 1918 in World War One. If you didn't know, so no offence intended. Last game is the Easter Show Derby between the West Tigers and the Eels at ANZ Stadium on Easter Monday at 4 o'clock. This traditionally, I went to this game in 2014. I think it drew a record crowd for these two teams of 50,000 plus. Obviously, I don't think...
Wasn't Tim out here?
Yeah, Tim was out. That's right.
Yeah. I come to this game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were there too. Yeah, so that's the last time I went to see this one. So the West Tigers and the Eels, I don't think they'll get that sort of crowd, but the West Tigers fans should turn out in force. So go to the Easter show, buy a Birdie Beetle show bag, head across to the game, and watch the Tigers continue on with their fantastic start to the season, and watch the Eels slip into the abyss and rugby league hell along with the Raiders. So they should both be subjected to the ironic punishment division, like Homer Simpson when they just kept feeding him donuts. Remember that episode?
Yeah.
That was a funny one. So I think the Tigers will get the Eels. I think the rumblings at Parramatta are bad. Like it's a joint that's on par with the Raiders for being rotten at the moment, and I just don't see how Parramatta... Look, they've got the talent in the halves. Hayne and Bevan French out. You know, Hayne, not so much. Bevan French is probably going to be missed, so it's the curse of the fullbacks there with Gufferson still not back either. So I would think that the Tigers will get the money here, but I think it could be a really open, free-flowing game. But I think the stupidity of Parramatta's forwards and their lack of cohesion, so they just do stupid shit. They've got players in that team like Kenny Edwards, Mo, you know, they're close enough to Silverwater Jail that they probably feel homesick when they're out at ANZ Stadium, and they'll probably just fucking run down the tunnel and straight up to the jail and ask to be let back in. So I don't see anything but a Tigers victory here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Jacob Little is on an extended bench for the Tigers. French and Hayne replaced by Will Smith and George Jennings. Chrisoni Ava to play centre. Kaiser Pritchard, Penny Terapo and T-Rex Williams come onto the bench. In ANZ, 12 games played, Para 9, Tigers 3. You know what? I think with Hayne out, there's going to be a bit more harmony in his side, and I don't think it's going to be... The Tigers are defending like a bloody a Trump wall over Mexico. They're hard to break. Even the Storm struggled to get through them. The Broncos struggled to get through them. I think Para's going to jag that extra try that gets them over the line. They're just going to jag it. It's going to be like a fluke of the year. And you know why? Because that means the Raiders will be winless after 4 rounds. And I can just see that happening. And everyone putting shit on the Raiders. And that's what's going to happen. So I think Parramatta 1-12 in a jag. They're just going to fluke it.
Well, I think if it's supposed to be hot over the Easter weekend, so it could be a crowd of 30 to 35,000. I would expect that there'd be a good chunk of Tigers fans, and Parramatta fans generally come out to support their team in games like this, and especially in the local derby, because there's no love lost between the Eels and the Tigers. Yeah, I don't know if I see a Parramatta victory here. You might be right with Hayne out. Corey Norman might play better football, but Mitchell Moses needs to get his fucking discipline in check, and he needs to do it now because he's had 2 stints in the bin in 3 games. So, not good enough for a player who's come across from the Tigers on big money, and there's more expectation on him because he finished the season really strongly last year, and he's been absolute shithouse to start this year. So it's going to be a tough one for Parramatta, and it's going to be a pretty vocal crowd, I would think, with probably a 60-40 split. Tigers over Eels when it comes to crowd numbers. So,
Para fans are fickle, so they're not winning, so they will find something else to do on Easter Monday.
I think all teams' fans are fickle. I mean, look at the Raiders. From 2016 with the introduction of the Viking clap against Parramatta and heading into the finals against the Sharks, and it was a big thing for the Raiders to introduce that, and then now they're getting 12,500 is I guess it's an okay crowd against the Warriors on a Saturday arvo. So I think most teams, bar the Broncos because they're a one-town team, have very fickle fans. So the Eels are no different in that regard. They've just got to get their house in order at every level. So I think for me, the Tigers. So if I was to run through my tips for this week, I'd go Cowboys, Rabbitohs, Storm, Roosters, Sea Eagles, Dragons, Broncos, Tigers. Yeah.
I'm the same, but I got the Eels. I think they'll jag a win.
So we'll see how we go next week when we talk about it. So, and obviously it's to watch this space for for the developing news, and it's all taking a back seat to the cricket shit that's going on at the moment, which I think has been blown way out of proportion. So I just had to mention that. But we'll see if this blockbuster trade, three-way trade, comes off between four-way if we between the Rabbitohs, the Raiders, the Bulldogs, and the Sharks. So, and that'll all centre around Robbie Farah, which to me is fucking unbelievable at this day and age that we're talking about Robbie Farah being the centrepiece of the biggest trade of the season, where the guy can't even crack a spot on the bench for South. He'd rather be on the fucking scoreboard at Leichhardt drinking beers. And he's just a player that the Raiders don't need. He's a Jared Hayne type player. He's very polarising in the way that he affects club harmony. And I think with the Raiders being at a low ebb, bringing in Robbie Farah could possibly be the biggest fuck up in the history of the Raiders, because he may destabilise the club even further. And what happens when Josh Hodgson comes back? So they're going to have 4 or 5 hookers. I know Ricky Stewart had a love affair with back rowers for years, but he's going to have Havili, he's going to have Garvey, he's going to have Farah, and he's going to have Hodgson.
He hasn't even given Garvey a run yet.
And Garvey to me would be the pick, or at least your number 14. He'd be your reserve dummy half.
Yeah, I'd go Havili and Garvey. I'm sick of this 3 halves into 2. One of them's got to go. He's dropped Austin this week. See if he sticks to it. See what happens with Williams and Caesar. And he's put Hingano on the bench. See what happens there. I don't know. Maybe he's taken a different direction, but probably not. It's sticky.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all the news that's come through for round 4. So, mate, anything else you want to get on your soapbox about?
Nah, but I do have a last thought.
Away you go.
It's easy to grin when your ship comes in and you've got the stock market beat, but the man worthwhile is the man who can smile when his shorts are too tight in the seat. Judge Smales.
What's that from?
Caddyshack.
One of your all-time favourites. Well, that's a good closing thought. So my thoughts are that get out there and support your team. What should be a glorious weekend weather-wise. It's still early on, so don't lose faith unless you're a Raiders fan or an Eels fan. Everybody else has still got something to live for at the moment. So on that note, that was a really fast 57 minutes and 35 seconds that we got through. So, hopefully there's some entertaining football in round 3. It's obviously still going to be quite warm, so we're looking at 30-plus degrees for the long weekend over Easter. Please stay safe on the roads. Don't be using your mobile phone. Double demerits come in force at midnight tonight. So, obviously, got any feedback for us? Leave it for us on our Facebook page, and we'll have the podcast up in an hour or so, maybe sooner. But please, any thoughts, any feedback, any insults, we can't wait to read them. So find us at Facebook at the Blindsiders. So and tell us what you think as always. So Steve Lamb, mate, I will see you Sunday at Camden Valley Inn for Easter.
Looking forward to it, mate.
All right. Until next week, good luck to your team and get fucked.